Hi guys, in this video I'm going to tell you why I bought the Sony a6700 and the 200 to 600mm lens. Hi, I'm the Dutch birder and 2025 is my 17th year of birding. This year I'm on a quest to document at least 250 different bird species. Join me on my quest through wetlands and forest of the small European country called the Netherlands. Hi guys and welcome back. I'm doing a quick round in the Onlanden to hopefully add some of the very common species to the list, so we don't have to focus on them when we're on our bigger birding adventures in search of rare birds. And I'm going to tell you why I bought my new camera and lens. But first, let's see what species we can find, and my first target is the little grebe. Let's see if that is here. There are only some sleeping widgeons and shutters here. Nothing new. The weather has improved a lot, by the way. Nice sunshine. I see a great white egret. That is a new one. The next species could be carrion crow, but they are very close to the road, so I hope they won't fly away when I stop the car. They're flying away, but they land pretty close. Flying again. So that's bird number 2 on the list. Cool species we could come across, of course, are Eurasian bittern and jacksnipe. But I don't get my hopes up, because I very rarely see them. But you can always dream. Last year at this spot I got both the Arctic redpoll, which is a very rare species in the Netherlands. It's considered a subspecies by most taxonomy identities nowadays, but in the Netherlands it's still considered a full species. And I also saw a white-headed long-tailed tit. That is a subspecies in the Netherlands. What's nice here is that they've excavated the top layer of the field here, so that we now have a small wetland patch here. Hopefully it will deliver something good this year. I see something sitting very far away in the trees. Could be just a part of a tree, but could also be a white-tailed eagle. So let's check it out. It definitely is a white-tailed eagle, an adult bird, maybe even 2. That's a nice one to add to the list. Nice. I was hoping for a water pipit here. I don't see any pipits. When I started birding in 2009, the white-tailed eagle was still pretty rare. There was just one breeding pair in the Oostvaardersplassen. Elsewhere there were some wintering birds, but they weren't easy to connect with. Luckily I birded often in the Lauwersmeer, so very quickly I got it on my list. But nowadays they're breeding everywhere where there's a large patch of water. Also here in the Onlanden somewhere there's a nest where they breed. Not in my local patch, but they often hunt here, so I see that pretty often. Okay, so why did I switch from Canon to Sony and bought the Sony a6700 and the 200 to 600mm lens? Well, let's start at the beginning. This is my previous setup. The Canon 400mm f5.6 prime lens and the Canon 90D, which is a hybrid DSLR mirrorless camera. So for instance, you can shoot photos in DSLR mode and in mirrorless mode. But the problem is, when filming, it does that in mirrorless mode, so you can't use the optical viewfinder. So I had to buy this thing, an LCD viewfinder, so I could use a viewfinder at all with this setup. Also, this camera does 4K in 30 frames per second, but not higher. It does Full HD in 120 frames per second, but then I miss a quarter of the pixels. So I would love to have a camera that could do 4K in 120 frames per second, so I could slow down my shots of flying birds enough so that it is pleasant to the eye to watch. Because birds fly so fast that if you film that in real time, it isn't that pleasant to watch. Now another thing is, this is a prime lens. And while a prime lens is usually a bit sharper than a zoom lens, it can often be difficult to get a flying bird in view or get a small warbler in a bush in view. And so therefore I missed some shots I would otherwise have gotten if I had a zoom lens. So for photography, you can usually crop a bit because you have like, for instance, this 90D has 36 megapixels, so you can crop a lot. But when filming, I film in 4K and I export in 4K. So as soon as I start cropping, I'm losing details. So therefore I bought this setup. A zoom lens and a camera that could do 4K in 120 frames per second. And with Sony, this is by far the cheapest setup where you can get a good zoom lens, a very sharp zoom lens, and a camera that can do 120 frames a second in 4K. For instance, Nikon also has a 180 to 600mm zoom lens. But if you want a body that can do 4K in 120 frames per second, you're looking at a body that costs between 4,000 and 5,000 euros, whereas this one barely costs more than 1,000 euros. And also in tests comparing this lens to, for instance, the Canon 200 to 800, the Canon 100 to 500, the Nikon 180 to 600 and some Sigma or Tamron lenses, this lens turned out to be the best one. It is very sharp, it focuses very fast, and it has internal zoom, which for me is very important, because if you're zooming and the front of the lens comes out, then you're losing stability. So sometimes you have to reposition the tripod, and that could make you miss some shots. So to summarize, this lens is one of the best zoom lenses out there, and also the body can do 4K in 120 frames per second, and is also one of the cheapest bodies compared with all brands to do 4K in 120 frames per second. And there aren't really any drawbacks to this body. So that's why I choose this setup, the Sony a6700 and the 200 to 600mm lens. Now I have only had it for like 2 months, and in those 2 months I haven't been birding a lot. So I have to test out a lot of things, and I'm sure gonna do a review in the future when I have a lot of experience with this setup. I see a cormorant, great or Atlantic, I don't actually know what the right name is. But I'll look it up and I put it in the top of the screen. I hear some bearded reedlings. Don't see any. Just got European robin. I see more birds. Gray-tip and blue-tip. I already have those. I just got a common pheasant up in a tree. That's not something I see every day. I also heard some field fares, but I can't find them. Maybe they were flyovers. You buzzard in the fields. Let's make sure that isn't your reflect. No, just common buzzard. So, wood pigeon added to the list. This ditch can sometimes be great for birds who like to get something to drink. Check this spot for Eurasian bittern, but sadly nothing. So, after some effort I finally got the black-headed gull on film. They kept jumping up and down. It was hard to keep them steady, but I succeeded. I've now left the Unlanden and I'm gonna do a small round in the village. First I'm gonna check whether there are any long-eared owls left. Because there used to be quite a group, about 10 birds. Last year I only saw one, a couple of occasions. Most of the times when I drove by, didn't see any. So let's hope there's at least one, we can add that to the list. But I have very little hope. And another nice species that is wintering here is a grey wagtail. Sometimes when I work from home, I see it taking a bath on the roof of the house opposite of ours. Ah, house sparrow. It's also new, of course. So, didn't see anything else. Friday, Willem and I are going on a bigger adventure to try and see some rare birds in the province of Flevoland. So don't forget to subscribe and I hope to see you then.